it's a little bit of the same vein with the flag, where it's like, well, look, man. I mean, like, should there be a statue of Jefferson Davis? Should there be a statue of Robert E. Lee? Like, where do these statues come from? Why are they here? I don't get it, you know. And there should be a long look at it. I mean, a lot of these statues were created in the Jim Crow era, right? A lot of these statues aren't even from back in the day like that. So I think it's important to understand where the statues came from, what they're there for, and then do whatever you want with them. If a statue's been there because Jefferson Davis founded that area and he erected a statue of himself and it's been there for blank however many years, yeah, it's probably like, well, this is a literal historic piece. It's the same as whatever, if you found a pair of Hitler's slacks. You know, it's like, should we destroy that pair of Hitler's slacks? If you found Hitler's first edition of Mein Kampf that he wrote in a notebook, you wouldn't just burn it like it was, you know, like you wouldn't just burn it immediately and throw holy water all over it. You would be like, oh wow, this is a huge piece. This is a historical piece. You're not saving it because you love Mein Kampf. It's like, this is obviously a thing. Now, if it was a statue erected in 1965 by some weird cult group and they, you know, it's like, okay, well, get rid of it. Get rid of it. So just like the flag, everything does have, you got to go a little deeper than just the skin. No pun intended. Now, this is where I think things get a little too crazy. George Floyd was killed in Minnesota by a policeman. And some people think the way to get justice for that is to topple a statue of Columbus in like Boston. That's where I'm like, all right, guys, we are not prioritizing our efforts enough here. Like that's not the move. You know, if I have weeds at my house, and I'm like, dude, I gotta get rid of these weeds. I got weeds in my house. They're destroying my property. They're the worst thing that ever happened. They are a poison to my community. I gotta get rid of them. If I get rid of these weeds in my yard, you know, the yard will flourish and everything will come together. And then some guy in Alabama is like, hey, dude, there's been some weeds over here in this forest for like 200 years. I'm about to burn the shit out of these weeds. It's like, that's great, dude. That doesn't fix my problem. Nobody lives in that forest over there. No one cares about those weeds. There are weeds in my community right now, dude. I need these gone. They're in my neighborhood. My whole neighborhood is being affected by these weeds. These weeds are happening right here. Can we please handle these weeds? And then 1,000 people take all the weed and feed, and they go out into the middle of the damn woods where nobody cares about it, where it's been there for hundreds of years, where it's not affecting anything, where no one would even know it existed. And they go and destroy those weeds. And they throw a party, and they're like, we got them, baby. We got the weeds. We took care of it. The weeds are done. And then they come back to their actual neighborhood, to where it actually is happening, to where it's actually affecting things, and the weeds are still there. That's my problem with the Columbus statues. We don't even know if Columbus existed. Not to be tinfoil hat here, but George Washington, Christopher Columbus, who knows, okay? This is the same government who murdered Jeffrey Epstein to cover up a giant pedophile ring. You think top on a statue of Chrissy Columbus, who maybe existed? Who the hell knows? George Washington, was he really 6'6" with wooden teeth? Probably not. Okay? I mean, like, groups fighting racism by destroying statues of Christopher Columbus is like arbor groups destroying statues of George Washington for chopping down a cherry tree. It's nothing. It's nowhere near like actually handling the problem. Arborist groups, go fix trees that are here. Go put your efforts towards trees that are here. Don't go destroy a statue of George Washington because he may or may not have destroyed a cherry tree. And man, I hope I'm getting this right, because I really don't want to. We're like an hour into the podcast. Did George Washington cut down a cherry tree? I got to find this out. Great news. George Washington did chop down the cherry tree. Whew. You see what I'm saying, though? Is that if you're trying to protect the trees, don't do it by just like dealing with something that may or may not have happened however many years ago. What the hell does George Floyd's murder have to do with whatever Christopher Columbus may or may not have done? what like, you got to be really damn confident in whatever the hell Christopher Columbus did to somehow equate that back to George Floyd. George Floyd's situation should be handled by, better training for police, better vetting of who the hell the police officers are. It should be handled by, a real overhaul of the police situation, complete revamp of training, complete revamp of how police officers are selected, complete revamp of all that stuff. It should be a clean sweep of all the corrupt cops, all the bad cops. It should be justice for the cop, or justice for George Floyd and whoever else is dying by police brutality, by arresting these cops and sentencing these cops and trying these cops. It should be handled by that. It should be handled by education systems in the inner cities. It should be handled by better education systems just overall. It should be handled by really combating racism here, now, in these cities, or really just in the nation. It shouldn't be combated by dealing with Christopher Columbus, who, for all we know, all he did was roll up on Plymouth Rock and give syphilis to a bunch of Indians. Like, we don't know what the hell he did. He has nothing to do with the racial injustices of today. And honestly, guys, it demeans the racial injustices of today by saying, hey, George Floyd, hey, whoever else, we know you died. We know this is really bad. We definitely know this is an injustice. We're going to fix this by going to this park 2,000 miles away and toppling this statue of Christopher Columbus, and no one will give a shit about this at all. And it's like, if you think that is good enough to be like a, kind of like a trade-off, then you don't understand how big the problem is, right? Every single time I see a video of 100 people breaking down a statue of some guy who probably didn't exist, every time I see that, it's like, why aren't y'all actually in the city? Why aren't y'all actually, promoting and protesting and working towards things that will actually change what the problem is? Just like the weed metaphor. Just like the weed metaphor. If all those people focus their efforts on their own neighborhood and the weeds that they see every day, the weeds that are affecting them every day, the weeds that are growing into their yards and growing and affecting their children, and the weeds that their children will have to grow with if they own those houses. Do you see the metaphor? Do you get the parallels? I don't have to explain this, right? I don't have to go. We're all there. I'm sitting here trying to give y'all a metaphor on the fly. As I go deeper into the metaphor, it makes more sense. Please don't tell me please don't tell me I'm losing you. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds here to catch up. Find the metaphor, find the parallel. The weeds are racism. Okay, I'll give you a hint. The weeds are racism. The yards, the neighborhoods, that's our community. That's our society. That's the only hint I'll give you. So we have to do better with prioritizing what we're actually fighting, or how we're fighting it. Just like when I saw these people, just like we talked about some of the podcast, when we saw these people looting or whatever, and they're taking pictures and taking Instagrams and taking TikToks, and you see these behind the scenes pictures of people holding a drill, and then they get their picture taken, they put down the drill, and they go home. Just like these celebrities who just don't get it. These celebrities who are sitting in their multi-million-dollar mansions in the Hollywood Hills, and they're making some terrible ass video, about white privilege or whatever it's going to be. It's like, hey guys, if y'all would get off of your Zoom meeting call or whatever you did to set up this terrible ass song or this terrible video, if y'all quit doing that, if y'all didn't do those videos, and you actually took all of your money and all of your power and all of your clout and all of your resources and turned that into actually fighting the racism, I think we'd be better off, right? Like, we'd be better off with you pushing all of those resources into your cities and your communities than you collectively getting together and doing these, collab videos. So that's kind of how I look at the statue thing. The Confederate statues, if they're a piece of history, I don't think we should go out just washing history away, no matter really how bad it is. I keep referencing Mein Kampf and Hitler, even though I said earlier the Confederacy and Nazi Germany aren't the same thing. But this is also something you hear all the time, right? Like, should Mein Kampf be sold? Should it be in bookstores? And I always say yes. I always say, you gotta, history, like bad history or whatever, isn't something that should just be eliminated. People should learn from it, understand it, see what happened with it, see the bad part, see how we overcame it, and see how not to repeat it. I don't see, and now some people, and it's not a blanket answer, guys. Like, that's why it's so hard. That's why, doing this podcast, it's like, what I'm saying, I can definitely understand where people would say, what about the hate groups who use Mein Kampf as propaganda? It's like, yeah. Like, yes, that's a bad use of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the proper way to use it, right? Just like the Confederate flag. It's like, well, hey, man, I know you said the thing about some people use it as a Southern heritage. Well, some people use it as a hate symbol. I agree with you, right? So it's one of those things where it's not yes or no. It's not this way or that way. There is a gray area here. There is an area where it's like, yeah, I mean, is Mein Kampf, should it be taught in elementary schools? Like, probably not. But if someone wants to read it and learn more about that history and learn more about what happened and the inner workings of his mind, like, sure, okay, I can see the benefits in that. These statues, really kind of the same thing. Should we be building statues for Robert E. Lee or whatever right now? No. Should street names be named after him? No. Should, just like I keep referencing the place where the President of the Confederacy lived, his house is like the museum. So that's why it's so famous, is that it was literally his like home base. He has houses. He has a Confederate cemetery. Like, it is a historical ground. Should all of that be destroyed in the name of pushing forward racial injustices? No. Like, I think those are historical things. That's a historic home that was built right there. And not to trivialize it, but it's just like when people go to San Francisco and they see the Full House. It's like, that's a thing. That's a thing. It's not a historical thing, but it's a thing, and it can exist. Just like this Confederate museum, it can exist. Should we be building buildings and naming them after Jefferson Davis at this point? No, right? There shouldn't be streets. We shouldn't be honoring it, right? You don't honor the people, but you understand that they existed. You don't honor the Confederacy, but it happened. So there was a statue or a saber or an outfit or a house or whatever the hell it is. It's not like a witch's, outfit where you got to burn it at the stake. I think people get too caught up in the symbols, and they get too caught up in what things represent, what things mean, and they oversimplify stuff. And then you have other people who are fighting just to fight. You got one side of the aisle going, hey, he was the Confederate battle leader. He's a racist. We got to destroy his household. And then you have the other side of the aisle going, actually, the Civil War wasn't about racism. You got to be somewhere in the middle. You got to be somewhere in the middle where you go, I mean, I wouldn't have an airbrushed in memory of Jefferson Davis T-shirt, but I understand that he was a historical figure. We should probably learn about him. If his house is still standing, if Abraham Lincoln's house is still standing, okay, that's a historical thing. Let's keep it there, right? Like, you can be in the middle on this. It doesn't make you a racist. It doesn't make you a sympathizer. It doesn't make you a social justice warrior. You can be thinking critically during times like this. And that's really where I want you to be on this.